This podcast is brought to you by B2B Better. Most B2B podcasts rack up downloads, but they never move the needle on pipeline. At B2B Better, we build own media systems that sales teams actually use to close deals. We've helped companies turn their podcasts into revenue engines, shortening sales cycles, improving outbound reply rates, and directly influencing millions in pipeline. So if you're tired of content that looks good on paper, but doesn't drive business results, visit b2b-better.com to see how we do it differently. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pipe Dream and our 1 in 100 series where we are publishing one episode a day for 100 work days. I am very excited today to be joined by a good friend of mine who lives down on the sunny south coast of the United Kingdom, Mark Masters, founder of You Are the Media. Mark, welcome to Pipe Dream.
Good to be here, Jason. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And so, I really wanted to bring you onto the podcast because what we're trying to explore on Pipe Dream is, what does modern day marketing look like? And I'm always talking about this story of, how do you turn views into an audience into a community into business? And, You Are the Media. I'm going to ask you in a second just to explain, what it is for our listeners that don't know, but, just to kind of tee you up, You Are the Media to me, whenever I think of like, a kind of homegrown, super impactful, passionate and energized community, I think of You Are the Media. So I want to learn a little bit on this episode about your journey into building it, where it started, where it is today. I want to get your thoughts on, what goes into building an effective community around a brand, around a business. But why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about YATM? What is it? Who is it for? What does it look like today?
Yeah, thanks for that. Right, so You Are the Media, let's get straight down to the people that don't know. You Are the Media is a professional learning community. It's all about how small businesses can find their voice, build their audience, and learn together. And a big thing that helped us out last year, if that kind of helps to set the scene, is around identity. And it's all around not having to fit in. We kind of lead into this word. The best word that sums up was around misfits, but using misfits in a positive way, in terms of it's taken ages to figure out, so we can chat about this today, but it's taken a long time to figure out about how we can build spaces where people can be themselves. Because all we ever wanted, Jason, was to step up and be in a place where people could look around and see us for who we are. We may be a quiet person. We may be someone that my energy levels are normally nervous, energy is waving my arms about and everything else, but that's all right. But we just want to be in these places where we can look around and we know that we're not on our own, but it was okay to always be who we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. And take us back to kind of, day one. So, You Are the Media today. It's a well-established brand. You've got a number of flagship events and satellite events that you're running throughout the year. I'd imagine that your membership is in the hundreds, if not more. But it didn't start there, right? So what did it look like right at the very beginning, and how does it look different today compared to where it began?
Nobody starts something with the efforts of, I want a community. It just kind of happens. So today it's made up of, as you mentioned, events. We have events around the country called Lunch Club. We have a big event on the south coast of England called Creator Day in May. But the thing that has held it all together, when you say, look, where did all this start? Where did it all start? Is a newsletter that started in October 2013. And the reason is because at the time, I was spending a lot of money on sales promotion exercises. I was making cupcakes for leads for people that I wanted to have a conversation with, but they weren't interested in me. They just wanted free food. I was spending money on SEO, spending money on AdWords, and I was realizing there's a lot of money coming out of this business each month. The underlying theme for You Are the Media, it's changed a lot, but the underlying theme, if you can kind of come back to where it all started, is around self-sufficiency. So I realized that when your back's up against a wall, when you don't have an abundance of budget, it's about being creative. And I started from zero a newsletter on a Thursday morning called You Are the Media. It was very generic, right? Everything today it would be stuff I wouldn't go near. So what is a brand, or these generic themes that I would share. But the reason I was doing it, and this is the reason I was doing it, Jason, I was doing it for me at the start because I wanted to build my own confidence, and I wanted to see if I could build an audience. And back then, okay, this has taken ages. It's been really slow, but I wanted to practice. I wanted to be a better writer. I still do. And it's still around in 2026, this ability to write and to get people on our side, and to how we can have a narrative that other people can join in with. So it's these small steps to where it started in 2013. And then in 2016, we started to introduce events. I wanted to meet people that were subscribing to the newsletter so I could make friends with them. So 3 years until it made its first pound, because I was practicing all along. And we started our first event called Lunch Club in June 2016. So where we are now, we're going to be 10 years of coming up to Lunch Club this summer. And it's these little increments that slowly build. We created a conference in 2018. That just meant, how could I bring people together? I was doing this all along, Jason, because how I could pick myself. This whole thing about is, how can I pick myself? But where we are today, the platform is there for us all to take from. So I wanted to know how I could do smaller events for people to come together, how I could do an event that welcomed hundreds of people, and how I could understand that. And now where we are today, from the newsletter that is still there, to refining events to see what can work for people, to building a membership space, this community has slowly come together just by being present, by this thing around consistency, and knowing that you're figuring out with other people on your side. It's almost like you're making this daisy chain. No, not a daisy chain. This chain of people holding hands when you're cutting. What's that thing when you cut out a piece of paper and you kind of have a chain effect? There's this chain effect.
Yeah.
It's slow. Do you know what I mean? But I wish
Yeah,
I
I
was
do,
that
yeah.
articulate so I could do it. But it's like that. You pull this paper and there's more people. There's more people. But there's more you cut. And the more the next person that you cut and you build into it. And it shows that that's the thing that connects each other. And that's really important today, is how we build this sense of belonging, how we can feel a part of something, how we can feel safe, which comes back to this idea of being ourselves. And it's a real, it's still a business. It's a great thing to be a part of, but I just like building something with other people who are on the same team.
Yeah, yeah. It's this amazing story, and a couple of the key takeaways from me from that is, one, like, kind of starting and growing organically, and putting stuff out into the world and seeing what resonates, and following that resonance, as you continue to grow. That to me feels very impactful, because I speak to brands all the time who they want to, as part of their strategy for 2026, it's, okay, we want to go out there and we want to build a community. And what does that mean? Okay, well, we need to invest in like a platform like Slack or Circle or whatever. And we just need to get people in it. And then it's just going to kind of grow organically from there. And, what you're talking about is, one, like, no, it can be slower than that. It can be more organic than that. And the other takeaway is, like, it needs to be value led, right? It's like, what can I do for this group of people with almost like little expectation to receive anything in return? Like, that's the kind of what's coming out for me, at least in terms of where you started, is I'm putting out this newsletter because I'm trying to practice a craft, but also, like, I want to share opinions and thoughts and offer some value back into this kind of, group of individuals that, I want to be associated with. And if something comes from that, great. And I'll follow the opportunity. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And so that kind of comes through, like, loud and clear. What if for you is, like, the kind of core promise that You Are the Media is delivering for its members? What is the kind of, like, the elevator pitch, the mission statement, that if you join YATM, this is what you're going to get in return? And maybe you can kind of talk us through a little bit about how maybe that's evolved over the last couple of years.
Yeah, the overlying thing that connects it all together for people is around all of us. All of us is better than one of us. And so for people, Here's the thing I've started to realize as well. And the mistake I've made is I've always led via the industry. Yeah. My industry, or the thing I learned within, was within content marketing. But people weren't interested in that, particularly small businesses. But they are interested in this around repetition, how I can build something, how I can build audience. So that thing that I said, the whole underlying thing is around building our voice, finding our audience, and learning together. But the return for people is twofold. When you come into a space, and I see this from people, the return is this. Again, I'm getting more confident in this, in the tone and the words that I use as well. The first is around confidence. Yeah. Again, these are things that are quite difficult when it comes to when we talk about brand-led initiatives. Well, what's the ROI? What's the ROI when we talk about confidence? But a sense of feeling comfortable around other people that helps us assist us in our own work. It could be you're brave enough to step up and to start that podcast, or to do that video series, or just how we conduct ourselves around other people. So there's this side there around confidence, and the other side is around the return for people is around friendship. Again, ROI talks about connection and how we're looking at relationships and how we're building that. But I've realized that our everyday lives are not that different from our work lives. So why can't we lead on words of things such as friendship? Because it's so true. Because it's such as, and then listen, when we come down to the nuts and bolts of it, it's like being at school again, and you're playing football with your mates at playtime, and you still back your friends up. You probably didn't enjoy your classes as much, but I can guarantee you love the time that you spent with your friends. Where we are today, when we post on LinkedIn, when we post somewhere else. Do you know what? It's nice when we get these little boosts from our pals and everyone else that's around us. It's not about creating pods or anything like that. But when there is familiarity with other people, we back each other up. And that's a really powerful place to be today, when we know what's happening around us with AI and everything else, is that we galvanize the people around us. So the importance of confidence in how we apply ourselves to our work, and a sense of friendship by knowing that this extremely lonely and isolating world that is out there doesn't have to be like that. So what we've made here with You, the Media, is this campfire to come to. You can have a membership space. We have live events to come to. But the thing that has been the home base for everything, Jason, has been this newsletter, and everything around this ecosystem plugs into it.
Yeah. I always talk about this kind of concept of like owned media, and like it being built on 3 pillars, which is content, community, and events. You know, you create content around which a community starts to be built. You service that community with events, both in person and digital, which then enables you to create more content, which allows you to service your community better. And like the flywheel then spins. And, you know, it is a often long-term initiative that you need to be prepared to invest in order to get to where you are today, for example. But, you know, the results start to compound over time. The more that you put in, the more that you can get out, which certainly is something that, you know, at least from the outside looking in of You Are the Media, I've observed. I'm curious that, you know, like you've been running You Are the Media for since 2013, you know, 13 years, 3 years a newsletter, and then, you know, 10 almost with the events. I'm sure over that period of time, you kind of look back and there are things that maybe you would have done differently. Could you give our listeners maybe 2 or 3, you know, takeaways in terms of, if you're considering building your own community, you know, what should you definitely do and what should you definitely not do if trying to, you know, get to the kind of levels that you have with YATM?
What does help is this sense of association. And you kind of said it 5 minutes ago, Jason, around values. And so when you look at values, so if we can move away from things like we're about customer service, or we're on about amazing quarters, where are the values? Because the values are what help us associate with somebody else. The values of You, the Media, are based around creativity, around this thing around community, but also around this thing of interdependence, not independence, but this collective approach where we are reliant on each other. So what is it that if we're looking to build something in a space that people can come around, what is the value that is dear to your heart that somebody else can connect with? Whether it is this sense of support, whether it is something around family, whether it is this sense of how you build the sense of togetherness, or maybe there is an injustice or something else that's something that you stand for where you are against something. So how can you find something that is easier to make an association on an emotive level with somebody? Because I know this, Jason, if I would have called it marketing hot air balloon, I'd be fighting with everybody else within the marketing discipline. So my thing that was based around self-sufficiency, how I can figure this out, community experimentation, learning in front of everybody, that's what I leaned into. So that's my big advice for people that have aspirations to build something that they have control of, but you have to be willing that it does take time. And the thing that you can't do, again, is what you kind of highlighted at the start. You can't jump in and say, I want a community. And it's because it's awful. It's not just for you, but for the people that join in. Sometimes we it's really popular and it sounds really nice that I want a space there because we think about residual income, or we can think about we have people that are there in front of us already. But it's soul destroying when you jump into something by saying from the start, I want to build a community, or here we go, I'm going to make the Slack group, I'm going to put the Discord channel, because it's heartbreaking for everyone involved, because the thing of consistency, you start to run out of steam. And also, nobody wants to come into a space where it's an empty playground. You may have started with gusto, and there's videos, there's all these PDFs to download. But as somebody new joins in, and they see that the last input was 3-6 months ago, it's pointless. So my thing of things not to do is to jump in. My answer is that how can you find something where you invite people or get to know people that are around you? It could start with 10 people. Sometimes we're led, Jason, by scale. We're led by scale that more gives us this sense of table stakes. We see it on LinkedIn in terms of the groups that we're a part of, like the company pages. And it does help in terms of reputation and in terms of how we're seen by other people. But we shouldn't be led by scale, because you just start small. You start with one person. You start with a friend. In 2016, I wanted to meet people. I wanted to make friends, Jason, with the people that subscribed to a newsletter that lived nearby. And it just meant that my overheads were low because I could service the people that were living locally, so I can make allies. And that gradually builds over time. So when you're ready to add another tier, you let them know what your intentions are, but you start with the first few for buy-in. And then you can slowly add these different layers or tiers, whether it's membership, whether it's a group-led learning. It's other people that are alongside you that does make the difference.
Yeah, that really resonates. And I think as I look at trying to kind of close out, this interview, I think about what comes next for You Are the Media. And you started at home, I imagine, or in an office, but you started on your own, with this newsletter. You've built it into this multi-pronged, owned media business with content, community, and events at its core. You are so prolific as part of You Are the Media, and I'm sure you've wrestled with this idea of how do we take this as a concept beyond Mark Masters, and we were talking just before we joined this call about, other events that you're looking at hosting around the country. And I'm curious to kind of dig into your thinking there. What does the next steps for You Are the Media look like? What does scale look like if that's what you're going for? And how are you thinking about the kind of separation of You Are the Media, the brand, and Mark Masters, the brand?
Yeah, this is going through my head a lot at the moment. A lot of it comes down to trust, because attention is easy to chase. Trust just takes a little bit longer, but it compounds. Now we're in this area now of how it compounds. So we have, I guess, Jason, as well, I held on to things for a little bit too long. We have our events in Poole called Lunch Club. So when you look at this ecosystem that builds around a newsletter, events, an online membership, a big event. So we have a lunchtime event called Lunch Club, and I've been working on this format for years. It now works. The format works whereby again, more of it's a community slant to it. Rather than having one person at the front that leads on a tactic, you have a theme or a topic that is relatable to small businesses. And we have it's panel led. So we have a lunch, we have a panel that will look at themes. So for instance, the past few weeks, we've had events that have looked at trust, that have looked at connection, that have also looked at being yourself. So we have events in Poole, we then moved to London, and now we're having events in Bristol. And so after Bristol, the plan is to launch, once that is working, into Manchester. But the thing comes back to what I said earlier about this ability to let our guard down and to be ourselves. And all this stuff takes time, because what we do in our events is try and break a world record. And to most people, it is seen as flippant, and it's seen as frivolous, and it's seen as silly when you're trying to unravel a toilet roll in the quickest time, or how many post-it notes you can stick on your face, or how quickly you can eat a chocolate orange. But the reason we do it is to help people relax. So we now know, Jason, that there is a format that works. So how do you create a format that works in different towns and cities for more people? And that's what I'm figuring out at the moment. Progress will be around how we bring people together around the campfire, but it doesn't matter where we live. And so the plan is how you put these lunchtime events around the country. I'm okay with going slow with it because I'd like to figure out. I know that I wouldn't be able to run the events as it grows, but that means there has to be a charter. Trust is a big thing in terms of who are the people that are from the community will lead events around the country, and then that all comes back to a big event in Poole called Creator Day. So we've set a capacity of 300 people for 2026. And when you talk about growth, I have no aspiration. I think I'm talking to you now, Jason, where I don't feel greedy. I have no aspirations to do an event where it says, we want 1,000 people coming down to Poole. I don't want that. And the reason is because I still want to say thank you to people. I can do it with 300. Could I do it over that? But I have no aspirations of going for scale again in terms of, but in terms of going bigger, more happening. I know a format. I know what works. It makes money that way. But why can't you care for the people that are putting their time and energy and effort into it so they get the best experience possible rather than spreading everything else thinly so you end up looking like everybody else? But I'm trying to figure it out, Jason. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm all right with figuring it out because I know what works, but it's something I tussle with, something that loads of us try to figure out because it's not easy, but I'm up for the fight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, that seems to be the kind of consistent through line, right from the beginning to where we are today and everything that you said so far. It's that, building a community is not an overnight success story, never will be. You need to start small, iterate, evolve as you go, figure it out as you go along, listen to the audience, listen to the community. What do they want? How can you continue to drive value for them? And, having been to a couple of the lunch clubs over the years, the atmosphere and the vibe is always incredibly positive and memorable. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop links in the show notes of this episode to Creator Day happening in May 2026 down here in sunny Poole. But Mark, where else can people learn more about you and You Are the Media if they've got any follow-up questions for you?
Well, the best place to come to is to get the newsletter. If you come to youarethemedia.co.uk, leave your email and get the newsletter, or LinkedIn and Masters. I guess that's there with any questions. But yes, get the newsletter every Thursday. 13 years, Jason, and I haven't cut and pasted one article from 2021 to 2026 yet. Incredible stuff. We're going to drop all of that in the show notes of this episode. But otherwise, Mark, this has been a fascinating conversation on building a community from scratch. Thank you so much for coming on to Pipe Dream, and we will see you at Creator Day in May 2026. Thank you, Jason.